For purposes of security, we're going one by one.
Mhm.
This room is not going to be hacked. They may try, but wish them luck. Debbie, good morning. Good morning, Sami. We're going through the process here of security. So everyone, please be patient. If you have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, this is the time to enjoy it. Good morning. We right now need for Avi to identify himself
Yes.
and where you're calling from.
New York City. Sam and I are friends a long time ago.
Okay, thank you for joining us. For purposes of security, we're interviewing each and every person coming into the room. Thank you.
No problem.
Debbie, we need for
Hello.
you to identify yourself and where you're calling from.
My name is Debbie Noya. I'm calling from Des Moines, Iowa.
Okay, good morning, Des Moines.
Good morning.
We have a few more people here. Please be patient. We should be starting in about 5 minutes. And even then, when we start, people will want to come into the room, and I'll have to be able to interview each and every one. Okay, Arna, I need for you to identify yourself and where you're calling from. Arna, if you're being asked to please identify yourself and where you're calling from.
Arna Cortazzo, and I'm calling. What is just happening here?
Okay, good morning and thank you for joining us.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. Thank
Good
you.
morning. Okay. And in about another 2 minutes from now, we're going to start our interview with Sami. And my name is Joel Layden. I'm co-hosting this show with Jeremy Derry of the Israel News Agency. I am broadcasting from New York. Jeremy is in Israel. And we're going to be interviewing Sami, a Holocaust survivor, who's going to enlighten us and tell us something about his story and basically anything that comes to mind in regards to Holocaust Remembrance Day. We're still going through a process here of security and making sure that everything here is operating properly. This event has been advertised to tens of thousands of people throughout Facebook and Twitter. So if our enemies haven't seen this, then I'm doing a pretty bad job. I do know that the Israeli ambassador to Germany was hacked yesterday. He was also doing an event like this. And this, for now, is the only way that we are able to screen, going one by one. Hopefully, Zoom will be able to have some sort of process whereby we don't have to go through these screenings. I haven't asked anybody for their passport or their driver's license, so don't worry. Okay, Mia, I need for you to identify yourself and where you're calling from. Mia, if you could hear me, we need for you to identify yourself and where you're calling from. And you are now unmuted. Good morning.
Good morning.
What is your name?
I'm Mia. I don't know why it was hard for me to log in. I had to switch computers.
No, it's a process. And excuse us, but we have to go through a process of security here to screen each person coming into the room.
Okay.
We had the option of doing a webinar, which just would be Sami and myself and Jeremy, or having people engage. I'd rather have people engaging, but there is a price, and that price is making sure that we have the right people in the room. Okay, we'll be starting in about 30 seconds. Jeremy, do you have a security logo on the bottom of your screen? Do you see the words on the bottom of your panel, Jeremy? Do you see the word security? No. Okay. All right. That's probably because you're not working as a host with Zoom. That's all right. It's okay. Anything happens, you just stick your tongue out, right? Jeremy and I. Jeremy is broadcasting from Tel Aviv. I'm broadcasting from New York. This is the Israel News Agency. And we are going to be speaking with Sami, a Holocaust survivor, a man who has seen and witnessed atrocities that none of us have been exposed to. I have unfortunately been the scene of many terror attacks in Israel, and I was down at 9/11. But all together, I mean, what Sami had been exposed to makes the coronavirus look like dust. It really puts things in perspective when you start talking about the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews were systematically murdered, 11 million people altogether were systematically murdered by the Nazi government in Germany and by co-conspirators in Poland, in Austria, in France, in many other countries. So let me say, Boker Tov. Let me say good morning to everybody here. Good morning, and welcome to the Israel News Agency. Jeremy and Joel Layden speaking with Sami. Sami, good morning. And if everyone would please mute themselves, I would appreciate that for right now. If you could please mute your, or actually I can mute you.
Okay.
Everybody's allowed to be muted except for Sami, Jeremy, and that little dog. Sami, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. I'm extremely happy to be here. And welcome, everybody.
So, Sami, Holocaust survivor, what does that mean?
I am a Holocaust survivor, but I'm also a child of Holocaust survivors because I was with my parents and all three of us survived. To be a Holocaust survivor, it means that you had to be in one of the three types of camps. That was the concentration camp, labor camp, or death camp. However, in 1991, another group of people were finally recognized also as Holocaust survivors. And these were people that were hidden, lived in the sewers, were in the forests, and everything, in different places. And
all right, Sami, again, I apologize. I have to interrupt. We're screening each and every person coming into the room. Adam, good morning. I'm unmuting you. If you could please identify yourself and where you're calling from.
Hi, good morning. My name's Adam Street. I'm calling from Manhattan. I'm
Okay.
a friend of Sami's.
Okay, Adam, thank you very much.
Hi, Adam.
Sorry, Sami.
Hi,
Yeah.
Sam.
Okay, so anyway, what I wanted to say, in 1991, another group of people were recognized as Holocaust survivors that lived in the sewers, in the forests, were hidden by other people, and they are called the hidden children. So that's what a Holocaust survivor is, either to be in a camp or to be part of the hidden children.
Sami, where were you born?
I was born in a city called Czernowitz. That was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. As the borders changed, so did my nationality. So when I came to Israel in 1961, the whole family, in my passport said I was born in Romania. I actually grew up there. When I came to the United States by myself in 1968, my passport said I was born in the former Soviet Union. And today, my passport, it says I was born in Ukraine. So you understand now why I'm a confused, I'm a mixed up kid.
And what was your relationship to the Holocaust?
Okay. First of all, since Czernowitz, at that time when I was born in December 21st, 1939. Since it belonged to Romania, we were not deported by the Germans. We were deported by the Romanians in an area called Transnistria, name of the camp Mogilev-Podolsky. I was only a year and a half. Fortunately for me, I have no memories of that period of time when all of us were in a labor camp. At the same time, my parents also did not talk. So for 63 years, I felt that I don't belong to the Holocaust survivors, although I knew it, but I felt I don't belong to them because I had no story.
Sami, again, I'm sorry to interrupt you. And this is going to happen for at least the first 10 minutes. We now have Karen. Karen, we need for you to identify yourself and where you're calling from. You are unmuted.
Hi, it's Karen. I'm in from New York, hearing
Yes.
Sami.
Okay,
I know
thank
Sami.
you.
And
Thank you.
I'm also working, so I may have to get off. So I'm just wanting to say hi, Sami, and
Hi, Karen.
good
Hi,
to
Karen.
see you. Thank you for doing this.
And thank you for being here. And Sylvain, if you'd be polite enough to identify yourself and where you're calling
He's my
from.
friend. You can unmute her. I'll tell you who I know.
Sorry,
Sylvain, you know?
I didn't realize I was mute.
I know.
Yeah.
I know Sylvain. Okay.
Hi,
go ahead.
Sami.
Hi,
He's
Sylvain.
my adoptive dad.
Yes, we know
We
she's a
adopted
good
each
friend.
other.
You know,
What's
Sami,
up, Jeremy?
Sami, this feels like the resistance during World War II, you know? Okay. All right, Sami, I'm sorry. So you were telling us,
I mean, and you like to do this all the time. This is going to be very disruptive.
well, we have no choice until Zoom gets their act together and creates some sort of system whereby we can screen people before they come to the room, because this room will not be hacked.
Okay.
Um,
So do me a favor. Let me finish the sentence.
I will try.
To interrupt, not in the middle of it, because then I lose my thought.
Jeremy will remind you.
Okay.
No, but
So
let
please.
me
Okay.
finish the sentence.
So let's
There's
go
no
back.
point
So like-
stopping the sentence is Steigmann.
So like I said before, okay, I have no memories of that period of time, and my parents did not talk about it. And for me, it's a blessing in disguise because I don't have to relive those sorrows every single day. On the other hand, something happened in 2003. In November 1st and November 2nd of 2003, the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. closed its doors to the general public for 2 days. It opened it up only to the Holocaust survivors, their children, and their liberators. There were over 8,000 people from all over the world. And if you don't know the word I will teach you, in Yiddish it's called basher, meant to be. And here it is, I'm sitting at the table. And next to me is a man born in the same city, been in the same camp, the same years, 1941, 1944. He was taken when he was 8 months old. I was taken when I was a year and a half. That's the difference between history and living history. By meeting him, I felt now that I belong to both generations, okay? And I also felt initially that I don't belong to the children of the Holocaust survivors because most of them were born after the war in DP camps. Not that life was easy, but those DP camps were run by the Allies and the threat of being killed was not there. Anyway, by meeting this person, okay, and talking to him, I felt now that I belong to both generations. And that prompted me, okay, to stop ignoring being a Holocaust survivor. In 2007, I joined the third largest Holocaust museum in the world, the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust. And in 2008, I got my first assignment to speak to sixth graders. Now, I don't know how many of you have spoken publicly, but I want to tell you one thing. The first presentation is not your best. It's not the most complete. I did not have a story. I did not know that I can tell a story. And I had no idea what impact I will have on sixth graders. Bashirt, meant to be, they sent me thank you letters, each one better than the other. But one sixth grader changed my life forever. She wrote, P.S., your story was overwhelming, and I promise I'll pass your story to my children. When I saw the impact that I had on my first presentation, I've decided to dedicate the rest of my life to reach as many young people as I can, nationally and internationally.
Okay, before we ask you another question,
Before I go
Sami,
any further,
we need to, right now, we need to ask Deborah Dahl to identify herself and tell us where you're calling from. Deborah, you're unmuted, you're able to speak. Deborah, welcome to the room. We need for you to identify yourself and where you're calling from.
Brooklyn.
Okay, Brooklyn is good. Welcome to the room and good morning. Okay, Sami, so let me now ask you
I want to say something.
a question in regards to how old were you when you were taken off to the labor camp?
That's why I have to continue. I can't do it. Okay. Because when I met that particular person, he was taken when he was 8 months old. I was taken when I was 1.5 years. Okay. Now, the other interesting thing is that because I was so young in a labor camp, obviously I could not work. So most of the children did not survive. My life was spared because they did medical experiments on me, and a German woman saved my life. I have suffered from pain all my life. Right now, it's not as intensive, and the intensity is not as bad as it used to be, but I was in excruciating pain. I used extremely powerful painkillers.
Sami, I want to follow up on the pain that you experienced. Eileen, welcome to the room. We need for you to identify yourself and where you are calling from. Eileen, you're unmuted. Eileen, we need for you to identify yourself and where you are calling from. Okay, Eileen has left the room. So we are screening people effectively here. Good. Sami, please continue. You said that you were experiencing a lot of pain in regards to the experimentation. Again, what age were you when they took you into the labor camp?
Joel, allow me to finish, okay, a sentence.
Sami, you won't be able to finish anything if hackers come into the room.
I can't because by the time I'm saying I have a sentence, okay, then you're stopping. So let's wait. I finish my thought and then let everybody else.
I will try. Sami, I will try.
Okay. So anyway, So going now about my pain, the intensity was so great that I used extremely powerful painkillers. I would say about 2 levels below morphine. That's how bad it was. And what happened is that I suffered from head, neck, shoulder, and back. But it was very difficult to find a cure, primarily because it was not localized. It was constantly moving from place to place, and the intensity was also all the time different. It could be between 7 and 8, or it could be, let's assume, 3 and 4. So there was no real cure for it. For about 45 years, even the doctors did not believe me that I'm in pain, because there is no test to prove that you have back pain, and you have to show it in your face. And I'm coming from a generation that was very stoic. You will never see it on my face that if I'm in pain or I'm not. And the doctors could not see it, and they did not believe it for about 45 years. Anyway, after they finished with the medical experiments, what happened is that not far away from the camp, there was a farm owned by Germans. And the German woman brought food to the guards and the SS. So she had access to the camp. Now you can let them in. Okay. Now, since she had access to the camp, the interesting part was that she saw the physical signs that I'm dying of starvation. A big head, okay, swollen stomach, swollen feet. And at the risk of the life of her entire family, she decided to give me milk, a German woman. Obviously, I do not know her name. Like I told you, my parents did not talk about it. And I was unable to honor her personally or posthumously. However, 6 years ago, when I was in Israel and I visited Yad Vashem, I went to the garden honoring the righteous among the nations. 27,000 Gentiles saved Jews. And they were honored at Yad Vashem, at the garden. Interestingly enough, I saw a marker honoring the unknown righteous among the nations. So in indirect way, I am honoring the person that saved my life. I am also, in addition to that, I'm also a motivational speaker. And I will go into details during the Q&A, how okay, but I'm just going to give you 2 examples. Number one, in 1996, at age 56, I was homeless. I am one of the third of Holocaust survivors in the United States that live under the poverty line. My monthly income in the most expensive city in the country is $1,299. And as you can see, I still smile. The other thing is I have a son, I have 2 grandchildren, and I'm not allowed to be in touch with them. So I tried to commit suicide. I'll go more in details later on if you're interested. On the other hand, okay, I overcame it and I became what I am today through volunteering. And my inability to be in touch with my grandchildren, I was able to still remain a positive and a happy person by finding a healthy substitute. So when I go to schools or campuses, okay, whether they know it or not, okay, my need to teach and to share is done through them. And I tell all of them that whether they know it or not, during the 2 hours that we are together, they become my substitute grandchildren. So my need to teach and to share is fulfilled.
Sami, so what I'd like to do right now is be very, very focused in terms of your experience with the Holocaust. At what age were you when you were brought to a labor camp? And do you remember, do you remember that?
I don't remember anything. All I know is what my father told me. And he
And
did
how,
not
how,
tell
how old
me,
were you at
and
that
he-
time?
I was year and a half. It
Okay,
was 1941, and the camp was liberated by the Red Army in 1944. So I was about less than 4 years old.
so you have no memories whatsoever of this?
No, that's what I said, and it's a blessing in disguise for me because I don't have to relive those horrors. The first memories of that period of time is not about the Holocaust; it's of the war. When I was about close to 7 years old, for a very long time I had a nightmare. In my nightmare, I was in the corner of a building, pitch dark. The only light that I saw, the only sound that I heard were from the explosions. For whatever reason, in my nightmare, I was naked, and I felt that I'm in a void and there's nobody there to help me. Although I lived in a very loving family, their lives were dedicated, to the children. That feeling of being in a void still lasted for a very long time.
So what happened to your mother and your father?
All survived. That's why I'm also a child of Holocaust survivors. That's why I said I belong to 2 generations. So what happened is, in that for a very long time, because of the nightmare, I used to associate myself with teenagers and adults that gave me a feeling of being protected. I don't remember of associating myself with children my own age. And that nightmare lasted for a very, very long time.
Can you tell us what your parents went through?
Okay, let me tell you a little bit about my parents. My father was an orphan of both of his parents. In those days, only the men provided for the family, and with very few exceptions. My grandfather died before my father was born, unable to take care of 8 children, no income. My grandmother decided to take the 2 youngest kids and commit suicide. A stranger saved the children, but my grandmother did commit suicide. So my father grew up in an orphanage in Vienna, and at age 13, he was thrown out on the street. They could not.
What was the experience of where were your parents when they were approached? Who were they approached by? And how were they taken to a labor camp?
I have no idea. You're asking me something that I cannot give you. I mean, I can give you a guess. Okay. My parents did not talk. The Holocaust survivors, you have to understand something. The Holocaust survivors, in the beginning, they wanted not to burden the children with those stories. They wanted to live a normal life. Only when I started to speak 12 years ago did I realize that my childhood was not a normal child. Until then, I did not know anything else. The other interesting thing is, what is also very important, the Holocaust survivors felt guilty, ashamed, and they felt like victims. There was one thing that changed their perspective, and that was the Eichmann trial, which was shown all over the world for 3 months, every day for 3 hours, and that empowered the people to finally not to feel like victims, okay, and to start talking. In my father case, okay, my father felt guilty because of 42 people, only 2 survived. My father and my uncle. And his guilt feeling was, how come he did not do something to save somebody? Obviously, he couldn't do it, but that guilt was there, and a lot of survivors had that particular feeling. And only the Eichmann trial changed it. But by that time, I was already in school. I had my friends and whatever it is, and I was not smart enough, okay, or to know enough to ask questions.
Did you watch the Eichmann trial? Where were you when the trial took place?
Said we came to. I grew up as in a Zionist family. My father was a Zionist. I belonged to a Jewish religious Zionist organization, Bnei Akiva, if you heard of it. And my father decided in 1949 to apply to go to Israel. Believe it or not, we received the visa only in 1961. The whole family went. My sister was born after the war in 1946. And when I was in Israel, I served in the Israeli Air Force, and I came to the States by myself in 1960.
Okay, again, but my question to you was regarding the Eichmann trial. Were you in Israel during that period of time? Did you watch the trial?
Yes, I was there. And I think the biggest problem that the Holocaust survivors had, and they were absolutely outraged, is that a Jewish, an Israeli lawyer was part of the Eichmann's defense team. Ben-Gurion wanted to make sure that it's done properly so nobody can say, you know, a bad word that the trial was not done according to the international laws. But the Holocaust survivors were absolutely outraged, okay, that the Israeli lawyer would be on the defense of Eichmann.
What do you remember from that trial?
Very little, okay? The only thing that I do remember is the outrage that the Holocaust survivors felt towards that lawyer. My memory is not what it used to be, okay? And there are a lot of things that I don't really have vivid memories. I can't even tell you specific things about my life in Romania. They are only snippets, very little things. So people have wonderful memories from the past. In my particular case, most of it is gone.
So when we get back to the Holocaust, did you have any close friends that were in the camps?
No. Well, in the camp itself, I mean, it was too young. Even if there were some other survivors and everything else, I have no idea.
Have you met people throughout the years that were also?
Yes, I met them when I lived in Wisconsin. I met a lot of them. I could not understand their passion to talk. And I said, why do you keep talking? When I started to talk, I can't stop. Okay, but I could not understand their passion at that particular time. And obviously now that I'm part of the Holocaust Museum, and I speak all over, so I've met a lot of the survivors, and I heard many stories, and I'm very happy when I hear their stories from different areas, because it basically confirms what I am saying.
Okay. Now you talked about the fact that you were, I believe, 1 year old when you were brought into the camp. You were one?
Year and a half.
Year and a half. And there was experimentation that was done on you at a year and a half?
I don't know. Year and a half, 2 years, who knows?
But you said experiments, you were exposed to experiments?
Okay. How did they find out, since I have no memories of that time, my parents did not talk about it. How did they find out that they did medical experiments on me? And I was in the 30s. And I did not expect my parents to come home, okay, early. And it was one of those days that I had such excruciating pain that I was on the floor, almost unable to move. And suddenly, my parents came home. My father, all his life, until that moment, never knew that I'm in pain. Like I told you, I'm coming from a generation that was very stoic and you couldn't see it on my face. He was so shocked that inadvertently, because I don't think that he ever intended to tell me that, he told me that I was subjected to medical experiments. It did not help me with the pain, but it did something else for me. It gave me the courage, okay, and the incentive to ask for compensation from Germany. As you know, the German government did not want to pay if they could get away with it. When I applied for it, and even here in the United States, nobody will give you a single cent unless You know what happened to you. You have documents or you have witnesses. And guess what? I did not have any of those proofs. Like I told you, I don't have any memories at that time. I just wrote that's what my parents told me. I was homeless, so I had no documents. And when I applied in 2002, February 8th, okay, everybody was gone. So I did it for me, not expecting an answer. To my surprise, on January 26, 2004, I got an answer. To my shock, I got paid a single payment of 2,500 German marks. Did not make financially a huge difference in my life, but there were two paragraphs that are very important to me when I go to speak to the students and in the campuses. One of them is they are admitting that I was subjected to medical experiments. Okay, and number two, okay, that they are admitting that medical experiments were not done only in Auschwitz, okay, by Mengele, but it was done in other places also. So one of the things that I use that is to teach the young people to do the research, because the neo-Nazis here in New Jersey, they use me and portray me as being a liar. Excuse me. Fortunately, I have the proof, I have the papers, and I can show the students, okay, how the Holocaust survivors use innuendos, suggestions, without providing the proof, okay, and everything else. But the fact that they paid me money was not based on what I wrote. It was based on the records. Whether you know it or not, this is the biggest crime in human history. The most recorded one. They destroyed a lot of the records. And whether you know it or not, in 2003, I read two articles. One of them was in the New York Times. One was in the Daily Mirror in London. The Nazis and their collaborators had 42,500 different type of camps. Not all, when they call it camp, it's not something wired, okay? Because if I were in a town and they took the people and they brought them into the plaza and they shot them, that was also considered a camp. But you can imagine 42,500. It's unreal. So being recognized as a Holocaust as subjected to medical experiments, it's not just my saying, it is based on the letter that I received.
What experiments were you exposed to?
I said it before. You want me to repeat it?
Please.
I have no idea. The only thing that I know is what I suffered from, what I was suffering today.
But did the Germans, when they compensated you, they checked your records and they confirmed that you were exposed to medical experiments? Did they describe what those?
Apparently, because I am right now, okay, I'm one of the people that I don't look at the negatives. I always look forward to the positive. I'm not going right now, not interested in trying to find out if they have the records or the records were destroyed, how they know. Number one, takes a lot of time. You have to have lawyers. It's very expensive, okay? And it's not going to do anything for me. It's not going to help me. So I am, instead of wasting my time on something negative that is not going to do any good for anybody, I prefer to do something positive and going to schools, going to campuses, okay, different places, showing him the documents, how the neo-Nazis use, okay, innuendos without providing proof, and teach them, okay, to do the research. Not everything that they hear, they see, or they read is the gospel truth. They have to understand that. And I, fortunately, not everybody can do it. I can do it because the neo-Nazis in May 15 of 2015, I was in speaking to 735 students in Bayonne, New Jersey. And a reporter was there and wrote a very nice article. 2 days later, the neo-Nazis picked up that article word by word, but they changed the headline. And they added some things and they posted it on the internet. So for a very short period of time, obviously I was upset. But it probably didn't take me more than about maybe half an hour. And I said, okay, like I told you, I always look at the bright side. How do I move forward? And I said, what do I do with it now? They have done it. And that's when I decided, okay, to take the papers that I have and decided to teach the young people to do the research. Because,
All right, let me ask you if Jeremy has any questions.
because to give an example, they, in the headline, it took me about 3 months. I want you to understand how clever they are. It took me about 3 months to understand that they called me in a simple headline, 3 times a liar. And they said, Jew holocaust, okay, who underwent Nazi medical experiments that he can't remember, okay, is still in pain. Okay, so they called me 3 times a liar. Number 1, Holocaust. It's made out of 2 words, Holocaust, hoax. If it's a hoax, how can I talk about it? Okay, somebody, okay, that underwent medical experiments, but he can't remember. That is true. You see, they're using half truths, but they don't explain why I don't remember. Number 3, okay, I'm still in pain. It is also true, but they don't tell you why I'm in pain and why people cannot see it. And I don't, only when I speak to schools, okay, in universities, did I talk about it. Otherwise, nobody knows that I'm in pain. I would say most of my friends don't even know that I'm in pain. Okay, it's unreal. So to make a long story short, but one thing that they did not put in, they did not put in that the German government, and I have the letter, admitted that they did medical experiments in Ukraine. And the other thing is that they are admitting that I was subjected to medical experiments based on their records. That they did not put in. So they only put in what they want. Okay, and that's why it's important to teach the young people, okay, to do the research. Yes. What's the other question?
Well, I was curious if Jeremy had a question for you.
Yes. Hi, Jeremy. Jeremy, I'm okay. Hi, Jeremy.
It's always a pleasure to hear you. And you truly are an inspiration to many college students, and it's absolutely amazing that you took this very dark period of your life and you want to share it and inspire a whole generation. My question is, what made you become this inspirational leader, and what gave you the courage to share your story now with literally the whole world? I mean, there's many Holocaust survivors that just keep it in their past and don't want to speak, and you're one of the few that is a bright light.
What motivates me?
Right.
Okay. First, there's several things. Number 1 is the reaction in the letters that I receive from the students. That confirms the impact that I have on their lives. Okay, and that prompts me to keep doing it. The other thing is, there is also something that I wanted to say, and it gives me the opportunity to do it. There is a correlation between Passover, which we just celebrated, and the Holocaust. And believe it or not, I found out about it only yesterday, which I used it several times. I never thought about it, okay? And what happened is, during Passover, we have to read the Haggadah, okay? We are obligated to read it. At the same time, we have to feel that we were there, that we were personally liberated from Egypt. Okay. The interesting part is the same thing with the Holocaust. that has to be told and retold all the time throughout generations. Because trust me, if it's not going to be retold, within 50 years, the Holocaust will be a footnote in the history annals. People have a tendency to forget. So we have to teach the young people, okay, the torch has to be carried forever. And that's the same thing what's happened in Passover, that we have to tell the story. We have to tell the story of the Holocaust. Maybe someday they will call it a different name, not a Haggadah, but something similar to it, okay? So the family will spend the time, okay, talking about it. By the way, the Holocaust is commemorated twice a year. One is January 27, when the Auschwitz-Birkenau was liberated by the former Soviet, by the Red Army. That is called the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. However, what a lot of people do not know is that Yom HaShoah is commemorating the first Hebrew day of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. And that is what Yom HaShoah is. There is another correlation. Next week, we are going to celebrate, okay, Memorial Day, Yom HaZikaron. And there is a correlation between the Holocaust and Yom HaZikaron. You may be surprised. And just because of the Yom HaShoah this year, I found these correlations. I did not think about it before. During the Holocaust, Jews died because we did not have a country. Next week, we will remember the people that died for us to have a country. And Israel is very important to every single Jewish person. And unfortunately, a lot of the Jewish kids do not feel the emotional connection to Israel. Okay? And for them, it's like a foreign country. I've seen many kids, I've talked to a lot of them, and they have no feelings for the state of Israel. The other thing is also something, and I want you to understand, is that Jews believe in life. We are the only country in the world that after Memorial Day, which is not a day for picnic and celebration, shopping, not in Israel, but after Memorial Day, the next day, it's a day of celebration, parade, happiness, Israeli Independence Day. We are the only one. So what we have to understand that as Jewish people, we celebrate life, not death. We remember it, okay, but that's not where we are. I also wanted to tell you something. A lot of people identify themselves by their profession, by their illness. Like I had a girlfriend, she used to identify herself. Hi, my name is Anita, I'm bipolar. Who cares? Okay? But that was her identity. My identity is not that. My identity is as follows. That's my motto. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to be. And within my to remain a healthy, positive person. One of the things that I'm very upset, which is happening here in this country, actually two things, is number one, is people have forgotten how to disagree in a civil way. Number two is what's happening is people blame one another instead of taking responsibility for their mistakes. And let me explain to you what I mean by taking responsibility and what it means to be free of the prison of your own mind. I have many reasons to be angry and to be bitter for being homeless. Many reasons. Yet I am not. And the reason is because I took responsibility. This was people that I trusted with my life. I gave them cash. You cannot prove it. I did not put anything in writing. So instead of blaming them, I said, you know something? It's not their fault. They took advantage of my stupidity by taking responsibility in learning to forgive myself for making such a big mistake. Guess what? I don't have the need to blame circumstances. I don't have the need to blame anybody. And today I'm a free. Years ago, he had that business. His partner stole money from him, and I asked him, "Did you forgive? Did you?" He said, "Yes." And guess what? As soon as he starts talking, he gets really wound up, and you know his voice raises and everything. So he is really not. In my particular case, to me, they're complete strangers, and that is something that the leaders of our country do not teach the young people to take responsibility for their own actions. And that is very important. So I have many, how shall I say, lessons, okay, that I teach the young people. And that's why I have that impact. My story is totally different from any other survivor. Every survivor will talk about the pain that they went through. Everyone. So whether you want it or even if you don't want it, you feel empathy for them. And it's a downer. Because I don't have any members at that time, there is no downer with me. So with me, everything that I talk is in a positive way. And the Holocaust for me is not as important to tell the horrors of that period of time. It's important to me to learn the lessons from it and to make sure how we can prevent it in the future. So I am a Holocaust survivor, yes, but I am also a motivational speaker.
Sami, were you marked with a tattoo?
No. I play a trick with kids. I pull up my sleeve and I tell them that I have a tattoo, but it's faded to such extent that it's almost impossible to see. It's a dead giveaway. And I ask them, what number or letter can you see? Or you think you can see? And they come up with all kinds of numbers, letters. Some kids don't see anything. And I tell them, it's a trick. I don't have a number because they used to give it only in the concentration camps, not in the labor camps. So to make a long story short, I teach them, okay, and I played that trick to teach them the power of suggestion. Okay, there are many times that we have people who you trust and how you trust them. So I played that trick to teach them the power of suggestion, but I don't have a number.
Does anybody here have any questions for Sami? I'm gonna unmute everybody. You're all
You can
able
ask me
to-
questions on any subject. Oh yes, one thing I want to tell you. How many of you wanted to know the background of the Holocaust? Because about 6 months ago, to my complete shock, because I took it for granted that the kids know about the Holocaust. And I found out they're totally clueless. How many of you want to hear the background of it? You want to hear it?
Or
Yes?
Oh, yes.
I'm on.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, let's understand something. The Germans, when they came to power, did not want to kill the Jews. That was not their idea. They was to have a Germany free of Jewish people. Juden frei. In 1935, when they came out with draconic Nuremberg laws and made it so difficult that a lot of the Jews left. So before the war, there were between 600 and 800,000 Jews in Germany. By the beginning of the war, only 200,000 remained. Most of them remained because the Jewish leaders told them to stay because it was the most enlightened country in the world and said it couldn't get any worse. When the war started in Poland, Europe, within 2 weeks, was occupied. Poland, and you may be surprised, was never occupied. and people do not make the difference. Poland was annexed. When you are occupied, you have certain rights, certain things that you can do. When you're annexed, you have to follow the laws of that particular country. And guess what? In Germany, they did not want to have any Jews. And when they annexed Poland and became part of the Greater Germany, they found 3.3 million Jews. That can be the idea of what do you do with it. And the Holocaust did not start, like a lot of people believe, when the Nazis came to power or when the war started. It started unofficially on June 22nd, 1941. When the German army, the Wehrmacht, attacked the former Soviet Union, behind them there was the Wehrmacht, and their job was to murder the subhumans. The Russians were considered by the Germans subhumans, and the Jews. With their collaborators, okay, the Nazis were able to murder 1.5 million Jews by bullets. However, officially, it was in January 20, 1942, in a city which today is part of Berlin, Wannsee. 15 high-ranking Nazi criminals got together, okay, to decide the final solution to the Jewish question. And they listed by country, altogether 11 million European Jews. Among them, there was one person that was not one of the policymakers, but he was the one that implemented it. And I use his name, and I use him as an example of the efficiency of the Nazis and their collaborators to be able to murder 11 million people in such a short time. Adolf Eichmann, in 2 months, towards the end of the war in 1944, okay, was able to deport 437,000 Hungarian Jews to their deaths. And that is important for us to know. And like I told you before, that was when the Holocaust survivors felt empowered to tell their stories and to start to speak. Yes. Anybody has a question?
I think many of us are right now just trying to absorb all that you're saying. You were, I believe, in high school when Eichmann was executed. Am I correct?
That was in Romania, because I grew up in a communist country. And one thing that I want to tell you, which is, okay, I just remembered. Everything starts with words. The Holocaust did not start suddenly. The genocide did not start suddenly. Everything starts with words. And we have to be very careful how we use certain words. And I'm going to give you a couple examples from the United States that are used not properly, and it perpetuates the false narrative. And I'll give you a couple of examples in Israel. Obviously, I'm Israeli. The interesting part is here in the United States, there are people that are saying that Holocaust is happening in the war. Even Jewish leaders say that. Holocaust is not happening in the war. That is a complete lie, and we have to stand up. Genocide, yes, but not Holocaust. Genocide is made of two words. Geno, which means group, side, murder. It's the murder of a group of people. Holocaust is a unique moment in history. It is the annihilation of a group of people. The Nazis, when they would have been able to accomplish, okay, murdering all the European Jews, their intention was to open up a museum. That's why they collected a lot of things, records and letters and all kinds of artifacts, because they wanted to open up a museum in Prague. They were going to call it the Museum of the Extinct Jewish Race. So I want to tell you something. No ethnic group today is slated to be completely annihilated from the face of the earth. Genocide, yes. Holocaust, no. Another lie that people say, there are concentration camps in this country. That's a lie. If you want to compare it what's happening in the South, you can compare it to the DP camps. The DP camps were run by the Allies. Life was not easy, was very difficult. However, they were fed and there was no threat of being killed. However, I use that, but in the proper context. And I don't know how many of you have heard of the Uyghur people. I was asked to speak in front of the UN building here in New York and at the National Rally in Washington, D.C. on their behalf. You may be surprised, I never heard of them, did not know who they were, and I had to do some research. And I found out that during World War II, when the Soviet Jews did not want to be deported to Siberia or face other dire consequences, they went to the south, the areas like Azerbaijan and Uzbekistan. When the former Soviet Union dissolved, they have right now their own country and they can determine their own future. But in China, there are 15 million Uyghur people. They are not jumping the fence. They are deported. They are tortured. They are forced to give up their heritage, their traditions, their culture, and to adopt the Chinese culture. As a matter of fact, they would marry a Chinese person, automatically they would get a free house and a free car. But apparently they're just as stubborn as the Jewish people. They don't want to do it. And the people, okay, their families in the United States and other countries do not know the fate of the people that were deported and are afraid to talk to their families because they may be deported. So in that proper context, we definitely can use the word concentration camp. The threat of there exists there, and they are deported and tortured. Going back to Israel, we have to use the proper words. And people use a false narrative, and that is West Bank. We have to use the word Judea and Samaria. Just like the Greeks are coming just like the Greek people are coming from Greece, Jews are coming from Judea. Once you use the word Judea and Samaria, Judea, this is our return to our homeland. And when you say Judea, you cannot occupy your own land. Okay, and the Jewish leaders use the false narrative of West Bank. So we have to learn, especially the young people, to use the proper words. The other thing is, when they use the word occupied, that is confrontational. We used to use a different one, okay, which can lead to that dialogue, and that is disputed territories, okay? There was never a country of Palestine or whatever it is. It's also a false narrative. And the Jewish people, human rights and to cloth and whatever other thing you want to do it, are perpetuating false narratives. So we have to teach our leaders, probably too late, maybe you have to have some new leaders, okay? But at the same time, it's very important to teach the young people to use the right words, because otherwise we will perpetuate a false narrative.
Sami, how old were you when you moved to Israel? And when you moved to Israel, did you move to Israel with your parents?
61, so I was almost 21 years old, because I was born in December 21. I served in the Israeli Air Force, 62, 65. And because I was 22 years old, most of the other soldiers used to call me Saba. And they were 17, 18-year-old kids. And when I came to the States in 1968,
So you left for Israel when you were 21, and how soon was it between the time that you arrived in Israel and that you went into the Air Force?
I would probably say about 6 months, maybe less.
And how did you feel about going into the Air Force?
Well, as a Holocaust survivor, being a Zionist, having your own country, seeing the Jewish policemen, the Jewish military, being part of it, that was one of the biggest moments in my life. Okay, so obviously I was extremely proud, and I worked on the most sophisticated plane that the Israelis used in the Six-Day War, and that was, if anybody knows, Jeremy, you probably know, Mirage 3C. So that was the plane that I worked in. And I was at that particular time, I'm not going to use the name, but I was at that time at the most advanced, most sophisticated air base in the country.
What was your tafkid? What was your position in the Air Force?
Basically, I worked for a while. I worked on the cockpit instruments, but I wanted to be with my friends, and it was a very interesting process. But eventually, they allowed me to do it, and then I worked on the plane itself, and I was electronics.
And what did you do once you left the Air Force?
Once I left the Air Force, I was an accountant, and I teach the young people when I go to universities, especially senior high school students, not to go for the money, but to go for something that they are passionate about. And I was an accountant. I made good money, but I did not like it. I'm more of a people person. I got very sick, and I had to change careers.
And how old were you when you left Israel?
When I left Israel, I said almost 29, 1968.
And why did you leave Israel?
Pardon me?
Why did you leave?
Why I left? Have you heard of something called Jewish mother?
Jewish what?
Mother.
Okay, all right.
Okay. After my divorce, and coming from that generation, for me, divorce was worse than death. But going through the trial and tribulations, I decided in 1983 to come back to Israel with no intention of ever coming back to the States. As soon as I came to Israel, I kissed the ground. And for 2 years, I was extremely happy. But my mother noticed something. She was a very sensitive woman, which I was unaware of. While I was in the United States, I basically what I did, I denied my Americanization. Even when I voted or I did something, there were only two questions in my mind. Nothing else counted. Is it good for the Jews? Is it good for Israel? But my Americanization took place, whether I knew it or not. And my mother noticed it. And she came to me and she said, Sami, if you ever want to go back to the United States, you have my blessing. And I said, Mother, don't joke, because one day I may come and I'll tell you I'm leaving today. And she said, fine. In 1988, I came back here, okay, and I started being a wandering Jew. But initially, when I came to the States, I came for a different reason, because only one person from my father's side of the family survived as a refugee in Shanghai. By the way, I want you to understand that there were only 3 countries that officially accepted Jewish refugees. So we cannot make any comparison to what happened during those days to what's happening today. It's totally inappropriate. because a lot of people are accepting the refugees today and accepted. In those days, only 3 countries officially accepted them. That was China. My uncle survived in Shanghai, Dominican Republic, and Philippines. Okay, so my goal was to come to see my uncle. My aunt in 1962 developed breast cancer. In those days, that was a death sentence. I finished my military, I forgot about it. And I was almost 29 years old. And my mother and my father joined my mother. She said, "You're still single. You're not married. Why don't you travel?" I said, "Mother, I have my friends. I forgot about it. I'm not interested." And they kept bugging me. And I like to compromise. So I said, "Okay, I'll find a compromise." In those days, in my passport was written that I was born in the former Soviet Union. And the quota to come to the States legally was based on the country of origin. So I knew, being in the former Soviet Union, the biggest communist country in the world, that it would take at least 5 years to get the visa. So I said, I will apply to come to the United States. Who knows what happens in 5 years, and my parents will get off my back. Nice compromise, right? That was not meant to be, because at a very short time, I would say probably no more than 2 months later, they changed the immigration law. It was based on profession. Why they needed accountants, I have no idea. But I got my visa, take it or leave it. So I came to the United States with no money and with not knowing the language. Let me tell you something for the fun. Being new in the country, many times you use words that are incorrect, right? Like in Hebrew, okay, when you read a newspaper or a book, you don't have the vowels, so you can mispronounce it. So I was invited to somebody's house. Beautiful house. And everything in English starts with L-Y. And I looked at the house and I said, boy, I'm so impressed. You have such a homey place. You should have seen the expression on their face until they realized that I don't speak English well. And they told me to say it, okay? Okay.
Well, you speak English well today. Your English is very fluent. You sound terrific, Sami. What I'd like to do is I'd like to ask you, how did you meet Jeremy?
Pardon me?
How did you meet Jeremy? How did the two of you guys get together? It appears that the two of you have known each other for a good period of time.
Well, here's the point is, it's easy to talk about something, okay? But how do you feel emotionally about it?
No. What I'm asking is, how did you meet Jeremy Derry? Jeremy,
how I met Jeremy?
Yes.
I can't tell you because I don't remember. I remember only one thing, that when I was 6 years ago, when I was in Israel, we became friends before. I don't remember how. Through some friends of mine. I don't remember. Jeremy can tell you, his memory is better than mine. But I remember one thing. When I was in Israel, Jeremy was the one, when I was in Jerusalem, they came to see me. And I will never forget it for as long as I live. Okay, it's a simple act, but he took the time to come and to visit me. Jeremy, why don't you say, how did we meet? Because I don't remember.
We met about 5 years ago, or more, when I was doing rallies in New York City against anti-Semitism, against the media bias towards Israel, pro-Israel rallies against the Gaza. We had the protective edge operation ongoing at that time with the Israeli bombing Gaza due to the Hamas constant rocket attacks. And Sami came to one of the rallies, and then he inspired me along with other people he inspired. And then I've been trying to help him, with other contexts as well, to try and get him to be a guest speaker.
What year was that? What year was that? Do you remember? Oh, come on, you're not my age. You have to remember.
I I actually do have the date. I saved it, I think.
Okay. Okay.
But I probably do have the date, to tell you the truth.
Okay. Very good.
It was 2014.
Yeah, but you know, there are certain things that you do, acts of kindness, and you don't think of it as some act of kindness or whatever it is, but that's your personality. In the little things that you do, you don't realize the impact that it has in other people. Okay, and that's why I teach the young people the most important person in their life is them. Okay, because a lot of people like myself, I did it in the same thing. We forgive other people, we respect other people, some of them, not all of them. We are also kind to many people. The only person that I was not kind and I did not forgive for a very long time was myself. I learned to forgive myself when I became homeless and to take responsibility for making the mistake. So I teach them, you know, that everything starts with them. In the way they will treat somebody else, that's the way they will be treated. And I just spoke yesterday to high school and middle schools in Long Island. The students, they sent me thank you letters. And I think the most important thing that they learned, okay, you know, obviously everyone different, but the main theme was that they learned to be kind and to love themselves. And that's something very important for me to, okay, promote, especially to the young people. And I start with the fourth graders. I'll give you an example. What's happening if you don't teach the young people the proper thing. I go to school starting with fourth graders. They're not too young to learn. But I was on the March of the Living with high school students, seniors from the Bay Area, from California. I think it was about 3 years ago. And there is an organization that I'm part of it. It's called BBYO, Neighborhood Young Organization. And in Pennsylvania, they have a camp where I meet with students from about 240 students from about 14 different countries. But they also have the international convention. And I was there last year in Denver and in Dallas this year. Two of the students that were with me in the March of the Living, and they were so excited about Israel, in the greatest country in the world, and you should have seen the accolades and what they thought. They were manning a very interesting table, an anti-Semitic table, J Street. And in their mind, they are convinced that they are Zionists. I did not go into a debate. I tried to understand where they are. But I just want to tell you the problem is, in my opinion, two problems. Intermarriage. I don't care which way the family goes. Be Christian, be Jewish, but don't mix the two of them together. They don't mix. So that is one of the problems. The other thing is, because of the intermarriage, they don't have certain core values, and they don't know how to teach the children. And the children come out with no feelings. To them, Israel is a different country. They have no feelings for it. And by the time they go to Israel and the birthright for free and everything else, they are already indoctrinated. One of the things that happened here at NYU, I met with the president of a Jewish organization. And I know that, you know, anti-Semitism is all over. Students are suffering from that problem. And I asked him, do you have a problem at NYU? And he's the president of a Jewish organization. And he said, no. And I looked at him and I said, what do you mean? He said, there are so many of us that when they are demonstrating. We just ignore them. That's exactly the wrong point, because they are able to promote their ideas. We do not stand up, okay? And a lot of people are indoctrinated because we did not come up with the right answers. Or when we are reacting, like right now we are reacting, but sometimes it's too late. Like I gave you an example, the kids have already been indoctrinated. Once they have been indoctrinated, it's very difficult to bring them back to reality. And that's
Sami,
why
we just have a few minutes left right now, about 5 minutes. Does anybody here have any questions for Sami? It's been very, very interesting, Sami. It's you know, we're all going through a very traumatic part of our lives right now, the coronavirus, whether you're in Tel Aviv or whether you're in New York, whether you're in Los Angeles or you're in London. I mean, you know, we're all going through this thing, as they say, together. Together but alone, but together. And for you to have made the time and the effort to come on here this morning, I could not thank you enough to articulate, to lasbir, to explain, you know, the experience that you went through during the Holocaust, what you remember, what you don't remember, you know, how it's changed you as a person, and still the harassment that you received today from the neo-Nazis in regards to what's real and what's not real. What I like to say to the neo-Nazis when they approach me, and they do approach me occasionally, and they do so, by the way, for the most part, trying to act somewhat sophisticated, trying to act somewhat knowledgeable, and some of them are somewhat knowledgeable. You know, they'll say it was a hoax or not real, or how about the Nakba? They'll try to divert. They'll say it didn't really happen. I only have one response for them, Sami, and that is the Germans kept excellent records.
yes,
Not the
that is part of
Jews,
their nature.
not the Jews, not the Israelis, not the UJA, not the American Zionist Congress, not the World Zionist, not the ADL. The Germans kept very accurate records.
It's part of their nature. And I wanted to say something. It slipped through my mind, which is very important.
All right, so let me add another thing regarding
Give
the
me one.
neo-Nazis. That when Nazis approach us here in the States, and they talk about the Jew or they talk about the blacks, what I like to say and remind the Nazis and the people that are listening to us is that the Nazis murdered hundreds of thousands of Americans during World War II. Nazis are not American. You see the Nazi flag and you see an American flag, they have nothing in common. The Nazis murdered Americans. So when I see a Nazi or I'm talking to a Nazi, and I'd like to get your take on this, I like to say, you don't belong here. This is not your country. You murdered Americans. Your party murdered Americans. What are you doing here?
Okay. Let me tell you something which is very important. Okay, there are certain things that cannot be eradicated. Bullying will always be there. It just takes a different form. In my time, it was physical. You could see it. Today, it's cyber. And things are changing the forms. For instance, hatred will always be there. Ideology. People that believe in the ideology are willing to die for it, are willing to kill for it. In my personal opinion, and you don't have to accept it, but people that, like the Nazis, they were not regular criminals. They believed in the ideology. Okay, and ideology cannot be destroyed by guns. You have also anti-Semitism cannot be eradicated. It will always be there, always was there. The only way that we can do it is through education. And I am asking every single student to mentor one person and to make sure that that person will mentor somebody else. So only exponentially will we be able to minimize, okay, the virus that we have in this world. And we have to be united in defeating the virus of hate, bigotry, and anti-Semitism. And that one is not a Jewish issue. That is a universal issue. And we have to, all of us, we have to be united. And I'm very—
Sami, thank you very much. We're down to about 2 minutes right now. I'd like to turn over to Jeremy and very quickly get an update from Jeremy in regards to what's happening in Israel. I know that is there a new government?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you very, very much, Sami. It's always a big pleasure to hear from you. And I'm sure that everyone in the audience, you were able to inspire them and give them a new outlook on what to think about. So, toda raba, kol hakavod. And yes, about Israel, we have two big things. I mean, A is the unity government between Benny Gantz, the leader of the Blue and White Party, and Benjamin Netanyahu, where there'll be a rotational government within a year and a half where Netanyahu will step down and Gantz will become prime minister. For now, he'll be defense minister. So now we only have a government in place. Will mostly make up of the Blue and White Party, the Likud, and possibly the Labour Party as well. Looks like Yamina with Naftali Bennett will be sitting in the opposition. The other thing is that in terms of the Independence Day and Memorial Day, Yom Ha'atzmaut v'Yom HaZikaron next week, sadly there will be no major ceremonies. Everything will be closed off. It'll just be through videos like we're doing right now. We're taking the situation of the coronavirus very seriously. There's been 400 more cases as of 9 o'clock this morning. It actually jumped. Yeah, it did jump up.
Where?
In the north, in the Arab sector, and also in Bnei Brak. But since first of all, the coronavirus will always be with us. Some days the numbers will go up, some days the numbers will go down. Now there's going to be a brand new reality for the entire world. But we are opening up many of the smaller businesses. However, with that, we have many businesses that are panicking because they haven't received government funding and may be closing down. There was a report yesterday that said about 25,000 businesses in Israel will no longer function within the next 6 months. By the way, if anybody wants more details, feel free to add me on Facebook. I'll send you the articles, whatever you'd like, I'll send them to you. And yeah, we're all in this together. But luckily, at least now, Israel has a government. It's going to be voted upon by next week, and we'll see what happens.
Do you see restaurants opening up pretty soon? Restaurants?
Probably the first week of May, restaurants will be open. Now you can do takeaway orders. The problem with restaurants is also how to maintain the social distancing, which is a big issue. And also, not sure how many people will feel comfortable eating, from the same, plates and forks and knives. They'll have to clean everything or maybe use plastic utensils. So the restaurants, will be a little tedious. Hotels, the tourism world hit, very, very badly. They're looking minimum June. My personal estimate, I say end of the summer, August, September, I think.
Wow.
The problem is very simple. Once you bring in international tourists, there's a major chance that the virus will skyrocket, which is basically how it happened in the beginning. You have many countries where they opened again for tourism, such as Singapore. Now they're dealing with the coronavirus yet again. So I'm not sure if countries will willingly take that step to open up the skies fully. For now, any tourist that comes into Israel has to be 2 weeks in quarantine, at one of the designated Corona hotels that we have stationed all throughout Israel, including the Den Panorama in Tel Aviv and the Den Jerusalem, same chain in Jerusalem.
So I've got two questions for you, Jeremy, before we wrap up. My first question for you is, as we're talking right now, is Benny Gantz the Minister of Defense?
Right now, he's Knesset Speaker. After they ratify the government within the Knesset next week, he will be Defense Minister.
As of next week?
Yeah, and then I'm assuming Naftali Bennett will be going into the opposition. Actually, as of right now, right this second, Netanyahu and Naftali Bennett are having a video conference instead of a one-on-one conference. So we'll see what happens within the hour. But I'm assuming he's going into the opposition.
Jeremy, what is the chances that right now that they have a emergency government, that Israel will annex part of the Judea and Samaria?
By the way, it's first of all, thank you for mentioning it as Judea and Samaria. It is the realistic term. I mean, the Jewish do come from Judea. Biblically, of course, as well, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob all hail from that area. The chances are quite high, by the way. It's the first time that we have an American administration backing with a peace plan to annex territories that I believe is our territories anyway. I'm not saying that we should displace the Palestinians or that they should deprive them of any rights whatsoever, but I do believe it should be under Israeli control. And I must say, only under Israeli control, we can ensure that there will be very minimal terrorist activities. I cannot guarantee that with the Palestinian Authority taking over the area. But the chances are very high that starting July 1st with the Trump administration, we will be slowly annexing different areas of the West Bank, otherwise known as Judea and Samaria.
No, I know that you were restricted to 100 meters of your home. Has that now been extended to 300 meters?
No, it's still in place, and it will be in place until Independence Day. The catch is, which the police are having hard to enforce, is to exercise, you can run up to 500 meters. So people are taking advantage of that loophole and going farther than 100 meters. I personally myself, I have not really been out much, I mean, besides going food shopping or around the block. But there is that loophole that many people are taking advantage of, and of course, more people are outside because they're also going to work too. I mean, many of the small businesses next to the Shuk on Allenby Street. Many of the small stores are opening or reopening. The Shuk itself.
What, they're reopening now on Allenby?
Yeah. As of today, there were a few people out on the streets, including some of the shops.
Great.
So, I mean, slowly but surely we are getting, activity back. But, as the health minister said, and I believe he's right, the deputy health minister is, there is a very high chance that this outbreak will happen again in May once people are out and about. And then we're going to have to rethink, what to do after. Sadly, America will be dealing with this for a very long time. There'll be many infections, many deaths in America. I pray for all of you in New York City and New Jersey. I know that you're getting the brunt of it right now.
The country here, Jeremy, right now is really being torn apart. Not so much by the coronavirus. It's more so by the White House versus all the governors. That Trump is saying, "Oh, let's open up. Let's go out and party," and the governors are saying, "No, we don't want to," except for 3 governors. So there's a very, very big divide in terms of how do you go forward, and that is making a lot of us a little stir crazy in terms of like what's right, what's not right, and then we go to the doctors. We listen to what the doctors have to say. And what the doctors are saying here in the States is slow down. We don't open up. We're not too far away from it, and when we do open up, we'll open it up gradually. But and also another piece of news coming from the States is the medication that Trump was advocating for everyone to take. I don't know if you've heard about it over in Israel. A study just came out saying that the medication is actually killing more people than it would make you feel better. So, you know, when Trump would say, well, what do you have to lose? Well, it's your life. And so, again, there's a lot of confusion here in the States. I think there's a lot less confusion in Israel. Am I correct?
Right. You know, basically here, you know, slowly but surely they are just reopening the society each week.
Who's really in charge? Is it Netanyahu? Is it the Ministry of Defense, or is it the Ministry of Public Health? I mean, who's really in charge in terms of what's going on?
Well, he's getting, you know, daily consultations with the health ministry, and they're really the ones calling the shot along with the Treasury Ministry, who's, of course, advocated very strongly about reopening the economy, saying if the economy wasn't reopened, there would be a collapse of the entire economy, which I believe they're bluffing a bit.
Okay, all right. Again, Sami, thank you for being here. We may have had a few people in the room here, what, up to 15, 16, 17, but much more so than that, this session with you has been recorded, and this recording is going to be going out far and wide. I want to thank Jeremy for doing a great job. And it was really, really nice that, you know, the teamwork between Jeremy and myself, I mean, there's a very big time difference, but that time difference works well for us, where he's able to hit the Israeli market, I'm able to hit the American market. And even for a good period yesterday, I wasn't even around because I was handing out food with a very large food nonprofit distribution organization. We handed out over 1,000 meals in 3 hours. In fact, I even got some really good granola out of the entire process, and some bananas too. But it's really a pleasure working with Jeremy, and the compliment in terms of Israel and the United States working together on a room like this. What I would like to do, and I'm looking forward to working with Jeremy on this and a few other people, is doing something for Yom HaZikaron in terms of honoring Israel's soldiers.
Joel, before you leave, I just want to see, I see Debbie, and I saw that she takes notes. So Debbie, if you want to contact me, my only social media is Facebook, but then privately I will be able to give you my telephone number, and if you have questions, feel free, because I saw that you took notes. So, and what do you do? What do you do?
Wait, Debbie, you were muted. You're now unmuted.
I work at here in the state of West Virginia as an auditor.
Okay. All right. Very good. But I just wanted to know because I was very impressed because you took notes. Thank you.
Thank you.
So again, I'd like to thank Sami for being here this afternoon. As I had stated before, we had a nice, small, intimate room here, and we locked the room down after a half hour. It's not pleasant interviewing each and every person, but it's a necessity at this time, especially after many programs like this are being hacked. And we were not hacked, so I have to thank Jeremy also for keeping an eye out in that regard. On behalf of the Israel News Agency, this is Joel Layden with Jeremy Derry in Tel Aviv, thanking Sami for your very touching and articulate discussion of the Holocaust, the memories, and the other insights that you provide us with. Joel Layden for the Israel News Agency, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. My honor.
Everyone.